I'm Veronica Marshall at the Capitol. This week on Senate Spotlight, a system the entire state depends on for critical care has been placed on red alert.
They just don't think we have the capacity. If we lose HCMC, we need to pivot and take care of things that we know we need to take care of, which is HCMC. The whole system, how we fund it, is broken.
The Senate's latest efforts to save Hennepin County Medical Center and stabilize the state's hospital system. Plus, errors, delays, burnout, and fraud.
It was pretty alarming to me, and it really emphasized how we need to take action.
How upgrading state software could eliminate these barriers that keep vulnerable Minnesotans from accessing the care they need, but it comes with a cost. That's all coming up.
Senate Spotlight is produced by the Minnesota Senate and Senate Media Services.
A statewide safety net will close if legislators can't find a way to save it.
This is important to every Minnesotan. If HCMC closes, the load cannot be absorbed. HCMC and our safety net hospitals are fundamentally important to the welfare of our state, and they are at risk. I hear over and over that HCMC is going to close in June. While we shouldn't be spending much money at all, this is a place to dip into the till as a state and decide how are we going to stabilize our hospital industries across the state.
Hennepin County Medical Center, also known as HCMC, is under financial pressure that could cause it to close.
One major driver affecting the hospital's finances is uncompensated care. Effectively, the care hospitals provide for which they are not fully reimbursed. As a level 1 trauma center for both adult and pediatric patients, Hennepin Healthcare provides the highest level of care for severely injured adults and children. This represents the most complex and expensive care in Minnesota.
Now, there's an urgency for emergency funding to keep HCMC's doors open. Senator Rich Draheim tells me more about the vital role HCMC plays for communities across Minnesota and the Senate's push to provide aid and save our safety net.
Senator, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're here today to talk about Hennepin County Medical Center. It's a place that you've called the backdrop for all care across the state. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think it's the biggest hospital system in the state that reacts to the trauma. You know, it's the backdrop for the emergencies, and it serves a population that is probably on the lower end of the social economic range.
This session you've talked about working to support the hospital system instead of other measures that have come up like emergency rental assistance. So talk to me about your thought process behind those calls and conversations.
You know, they're tough conversations because two things can be true at once. So we could need some rental assistance programs, and we could need an influx of state capital for a medical system like HCMC. My frustration is the fraud. You know, we're funding programs that have been frozen or have had issues, and we're really not seeing suggestions from the administration on how do we make it better to provide those services to people. So I have a hard time funding some of these programs that I do think have a place, or expanding them when they're not fixed. You know, so it should be a team effort. We should all be focused on how do we make sure we don't have the fraud, waste, and abuse in our programs that are across the board in pretty much every agency. The governor calls them loopholes, but I think when you talk to the average Minnesotan, they're going to call it fraud, waste, and abuse. We need to just kind of either have a team effort from the administration, who controls all the agencies, to work on that, or we need to pivot and take care of things that we know we need to take care of, which is HCMC. The whole system, how we fund it, is broken. It's a huge conversation, and that has some federal ties on reimbursement rates, some state ties, and then of course local ties with that particular hospital group.
And you brought us back to HCMC, and the reason we're really talking about it is because we're hearing reports it may be forced to close. How did we get here? Tell me a little bit more about that.
How did we get here? Well, I think there's a lot of different things. One is our system is broken, and how we reimburse hospitals for patients. And I think part of that, and just part of that, is the increase in the number of people that rely on medical assistance. So medical assistance is a safety net. But we have grown that. I think the current number is around 1.7 million Minnesotans out of 5.7. And of course, a large population of those people are in the metro and would be shipped to HCMC for service. So if you're only going to get it reimbursed at a real low rate on a large population, that messes up the funding for the whole program. And it's hard to make ends meet. All the hospitals are hurting across the state except for probably Mayo. I think had a $1.2 billion profit this year, but most systems are really hurting.
So you said all hospitals are hurting, but there's a lot of focus on HCMC. Like your colleague, Senator Abler, said, if it closes, the load cannot be absorbed. You've said we can't lose HCMC. So why is this one hospital so valuable?
Just the volume of patients that it handles in a year. I think, they're a level 1 trauma center, and everybody gets shipped there.
And so talk to me about that, the impact this would have on the rest of the state, because not everyone's in the metro and they don't necessarily care too much about what happens here, but this would affect everyone?
I believe it would have some impact on most people or someone's loved ones. That being said, I also want to take care of the hospitals in my district or up north. I'm in southern Minnesota, and it doesn't mean that the hospitals aren't important down there or way up north on the Canadian border. I think we just have to prioritize our care system. And, in my area, I have 32, 33 small towns. Most of them rely on volunteer emergency response personnel, and most of them don't have up-to-date equipment. There are parts of the state where you could be traveling across the state. Let's say you're going camping and you're going to the middle of nowhere to go camping. That there might not be anybody there to respond to that 911 call in a timely fashion. That is scary. That should be a priority. And I think that's why a lot of people in my caucus get upset over the waste, fraud, and abuse, because we could use just a sliver of that money to help fund those small first responders, to help people, or to save our local hospitals so we have somewhere to go if someone has a heart attack. Or I've had some bills dealing with oncology or cancer care in the rural areas. It's hard to have the energy to drive home after some of the cancer treatments. And, especially when you're getting up in age, a lot of these people can't drive at night. We don't have the transportation systems that run as long as they do in the metro and outstate. So we need that care closer to home so they can go get their treatments and come back home in the daylight.
Yeah, I think I heard Senator Hochschild say once that your zip code shouldn't determine your level of care. Yeah. So, you've got the North with you there as well. Let's turn back to the money and the funds. There have been ideas floated to save HCMC from closing so we don't have this gap in our care here in the state. One idea is to raise Hennepin County's sales tax. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Hennepin County sales tax are quite a bit already. One of my big passions has been housing. And I think for the average person, that is their biggest asset. And we are literally taxing people out of their homes. So for someone working like yourself or myself, we can adjust what we do. We can make more money, we can get a second job. But if you're retired, you're on a fixed income. And when you're seeing a double-digit tax increase year after year, it makes it pretty hard on top of what's happened with your house insurance, utilities, cost of care, everything has gone up. in the last 5 years. So we can't keep on relying on property taxes because we are hurting the people on the lowest level of that economic spectrum the worst. And part of that is the seniors. So I don't think we need to tax more. I think we need to reel in the spending. And part of that is looking at the waste, fraud, and abuse and reevaluating the programs and make sure they're going to really the people that need it and not just the people that say they need it and sign up for it. And it turns out most of the programs are riddled with fraud, and the need of so many programs is in question, in my opinion.
So you've mentioned waste, fraud, and abuse as a way to kind of help shore up the system for now, at least by giving those extra dollars. I know Senator Abler put forth an idea, a multi-pronged approach. Are you hearing other thoughts on how to save HCMC?
Yeah, I think everybody has their own ideas, but it just needs to be a priority. And, I don't know if any bills got signed in this week, but we were at 4 bills this year. And in my 10 years, that is the slowest I have seen it in 10 years, which is disappointing. And I think leadership can do better. The governor can do better. We just need to work together to figure it out. I think it is something that affects the whole state. I think we can adjust some things to make it more sustainable, but I don't think we need to raise taxes to do it.
You've talked a lot about the systems in your area, your district, your region that are closing. Is it for the same reason as HCMC or something else going on there?
I think, I really think it's because of the big hospital groups swallowing them up to buy territory. They systematically come in, and good or bad, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus here, but what they do is they come in and acquire a hospital and then slowly make it harder to get an appointment. So once there's not as many appointments, their patient count goes down, and then they justify closing whatever subject matter of that doctor unit was, if it was the birthing center or cancer care, oncology, radiology, whatever it is, and then they slowly shut it down, those individual systems, and then they say, well, we can't justify keeping it open because we don't have enough patients. I've seen it play over and over and over again in rural Minnesota, time and time again.
What do you expect will happen if Minnesota doesn't come to terms with its issues, with its health systems right now?
I am sure we'll figure it out, but at what cost? And, unfortunately, it's, the people that don't have the resources probably will get hurt the most. Where if you can afford it, you're going to hire someone to drive you, or make sure that you get the care if you can afford it. And those that can't won't, and that's sad.
I've heard support from several people on your caucus, Senator Abler, Senator Coran, and I've heard Senator Rest from the other caucus talk about supporting HCMC. So does that give you a hope that there can be a solution going out the door this session, either short-term, long-term, systemic?
It was the first time I brought it up was on the floor, I think during Senator Port's bill on housing, emergency relief for that, and I think this is more important than that bill, because even though as important as housing is to me, I didn't think there was urgency for that as this is, and other hospitals across the state. I think it needs to be front and center. Whoever takes my position over and moves on, healthcare, as we have an aging population, costs more. And that population is part of the reimbursement rate that's smaller than larger. So I think we're in for a couple hard years of figuring out how to pay for that cost of care.
Thank you for your time today, Senator. I appreciate it.
Critical funding bills aiming to keep Hennepin County Medical Center open are moving through the Senate now. The Senate's Health and Human Services Committee's supplemental budget bill includes $150 million to stabilize HCMC. The one-time appropriation includes accountability and reporting requirements. Meanwhile, DFL Senator Ann Rest's bipartisan bill, Senate File 4986, would require Hennepin County to direct sales tax revenues to HCMC after payments for specific capital improvement projects and other county-specific purposes. Minnesotans who rely on support to meet their essential needs like food and health care depend on the state to provide fast and efficient systems that deliver that help without delay. But the state's current health and human services software is antiquated, leading to workarounds and longer wait times, errors, and extra expenses.
When you have folks on the ground who are vulnerable, who are looking for whether it's support for food or social assistance, whatever it might be, and you interact with a government that is trying to be helpful and doing their best, but at the end of the day, you're getting lost in the system, your application doesn't go through, something goes awry and gets missed, all of that just creates a situation where people lose faith in their government, they lose faith in the ability of us to help support them, and their ability to move up and find a job or get an opportunity. So it really is a dysfunctional system that is really a disservice, not only to the workers who provide it, but the people who rely on it.
Government is a lot like Soylent Green in that it's actually made of people, and you have people who have to do a job. These are your neighbors who are trying to help their neighbors, and these are people who are working at your county office just down the street. And when their life is made more difficult, the lives of the people they're trying to serve is made more difficult as well. So I think it's really important that we give folks in government the tools they need to do the work that they have to do to help us all.
I mean, I was born in 1989, I think one of the systems from 1988, and so it's just amazing that we have never updated these systems, and it's just creating a lot of inefficiencies, and then also a lack of accountability. If there are, things that are getting missed, or if human error comes in, or if there is some sort of fraudulent use of these programs, we want to make sure that the system is all speaking to each other, and right now they're not. We're talking millions of dollars for our counties that are being spent on these systems to hire the additional staff that are needed, to try to put placeholders in for these systems. And if we could save that money and apply those staff towards other ways of providing more efficient services, it would really make our government more effective.
We think about the rising of our property taxes and the affordability crisis that we've got. Well, if government worked a little bit more efficiently, they wouldn't need to have property taxes as high as they are. It's something that impacts all of us, not just the people who have to do the job, not just the people who benefit from it, but everyone who's paying property taxes, which is everybody.
Now, senators are taking notice and taking action. I talked to Senator Melissa Wiklund about her work to update Health and Human Services aging systems.
Senator, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
Talk to me a little bit about the people that are being impacted by this. Who are these systems serving?
Well, they're serving Minnesotans from all across our state. Minnesotans have needs for basic needs that these systems are deciding their eligibility for them. Things like access to food, like our SNAP program. Access to health care through our medical assistance program. And so people are in this situation where they are maybe struggling to make ends meet, and they qualify for some supplemental assistance for food, and they're here, or they're at the counties to get access to these programs. So it's basic needs, and to find that applying for these programs is time-consuming and requires a lot of effort on their part. That doesn't really help them try to get on with their, making their ends meet. Also, it affects the county workers because they're trying to meet the needs of many people coming to them for these benefits. There's many people applying each week, and if everything takes a long time to do, it's hard for them to keep up, and that causes wait times for the participants. That slows things down. So it really affects both, Minnesotans who want to access the benefits and the workers.
Now, this software we've been talking about is for the Department of Human Services. They've been involved in several fraud investigations, and testifiers have said that that's kind of in part due to these older siloed systems. So talk to me about how these outdated programs are making our systems vulnerable.
Well, I think that it has an impact in multiple ways. One example of a way that it could affect our program integrity and people, the right people getting access to services and programs that they need, and trying to stop people from taking advantage of systems in a way that is fraudulent. The systems don't tend to be talking to each other very well, so the information is kind of siloed, which makes it difficult for people to detect when there might be people taking advantage of one system, and then the other system isn't aware, or people can't see a relationship to what's going on in another system. So I think if we had better systems, modernization, that would become more apparent. People could detect patterns in people trying to enroll in programs. And then another aspect is just that it's prone to people entering information incorrectly, which isn't fraud, but it is an error that needs to be corrected. And so as it takes time to detect the errors, then that's more time that people either are not able to access the benefits they deserve, or perhaps they're receiving benefits that they aren't eligible for. So.
Well, we've outlined the problem now. Let's talk about the solution. You have a bill, Senate File 4719, that aims to establish a Human Services Systems Steering Committee. Tell me about it. What does that mean?
Well, what I heard from the counties over the past several months prior to session was that they felt that this was really coming to a head, that they had great needs for systems improvements, and they really need to work closely with the agencies to be able to determine how to modify the current systems so they work better for the counties. And so this steering committee is a way to bring more collaboration to the process. It would require participation by county members, also members from the agency's Department of Human Services, the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and also our IT agency Minute. So it would require them to work together to develop recommendations on how to implement new systems in the human services area, and how to prioritize different operational efficiencies in a better way. Right now, the counties don't feel that they have as much input into prioritizing changes to the system, and this would be a way to kind of require everybody to get together and work on that.
These upgrades are not going to come for free. Do we have any idea yet of how much it could cost to upgrade the system?
I think that's a work in progress. I think that some of these systems, because they are so complex and we have multiple large complex systems, those can take large sums to to actually do the modernization. As an example, last year we finally were able to put together enough funding for the system that's called SSIS. It has to do with child welfare services. That one, to replace that system, is probably going to cost close to $80 million. Minnesota put together, in the legislative session, we put together a package that is going to be about $40 million. And then we're applying for federal matching funds to come up to that. So that's an example of one system. The systems like Maxis that you hear referenced are more complex, used by more people, and will be significantly more expensive to replace. So it's a large amount of money and hard to budget for.
You mentioned the federal government, and upgrading these systems will also continue to ensure that we get federal dollars, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Today there is a way to get federal matching funding for IT development, and so we want to be able to make use of that to be able to replace or modernize these systems. But not modernizing them and allowing these inefficiencies to go on is not something that the federal government will look kindly on either, and we could be subject to other penalties if we aren't able to either implement the systems correctly for meeting federal requirements. There are things called error rates that are within some of the programs, like the SNAP program and in our Medicaid program. And so the agencies are constantly monitoring and working to make sure that we fall below what those error rate levels are. Otherwise, we could be subject to penalties as a result of that.
This bill is bipartisan, so you have support from all of the caucuses on it. Does that give you hope it'll pass this session?
It is bipartisan, and I think many, or if not most, legislators have been visited by constituents and counties, county commissioners, people that live in their communities, to help them understand the need for modernizing these systems. And so it has been something that I keep hearing more and more people who have either gone to demonstrations or they've just been talking with their county commissioners, and they emphasize how critical it is that we do something now. So I think there is a sense of urgency about funding this session, even though it isn't a budget session. Another reason is that counties are anticipating more work because of the passage of H.R. 1 at the federal level. This will require them to do more validations of people's eligibility more frequently, and also implement things like the work requirements, community engagement requirements. And so it's really, I think people understand the urgency much better.
Your bill 4719 is a short-term fix. What are you hearing about a longer-term solution?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've discussed. There's, I think, multiple discussions going on about how to plan for the long term. I have a bill, Senate File 5020, that would set up a method to build a IT kind of a account so that we have more funding set aside for long-term use in some of these larger systems that require such big investments. And it also requires Minute to put together a plan that would help us understand what the path is for going forward with modernization.
Senator, it's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.